So yes, treasuries and the dollar are acting as safe havens. But I would say the best performing safe havens are gold and silver. Thursday, February 24th, 2022, Monaco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So gold and silver are breaking out this morning as the conflict in Ukraine intensifies. So in this report, we're going to look at what's going on in the Ukraine. We're going to look at an article from the FT that's come out this morning. And then I'm going to show you a picture of a map of NATO, comparing it to 1998 and today. And then, of course, we're going to look at gold and silver, how they're looking technically. And I'm going to also cover what I think is going on aside from the geopolitical tensions, because I think a lot of people are going to say gold and silver are going up just because of what's happening in Ukraine. And I think it's not as clear-cut as that. So, FT, Russia begins full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Putin demands Kiev lay down arms as explosions heard in country's capital. Vladimir Putin has begun a full-scale military invasion of Ukraine and demanded Kiev's army lay down its weapons, starting what could be the largest conflict in Europe since the Second World War. Do I agree with all that the FT says? No, I'm just giving you a bit of a rundown on what's going on. In an address on state television shortly before 6 a.m. on Thursday, so earlier this morning, Russia's president said Moscow would seek to denazify Ukraine and defend victims of genocide. Well, you don't hear about that in the West. I guess we're hearing it now, but it's coming from the president of Russia. There are no signs of such crime being perpetrated by the Kiev authorities. That's what the FT says. He warned other countries against the temptation of meddling in the ongoing events and said Russia's response would lead you to consequences that you have never encountered in your history. I mean, that's pretty tough talking. The goal is to defend people who have been victims of abuse and genocide from the Kiev regime, Putin said. And those are the people in the eastern regions of Donetsk and Lugansk, the Donbass region, where I think over half the population is ethnic Russian, and it's been a war zone there since 2014. You just have to watch the video by Baldwin Bankrupt, who was there about a year ago. I'll put it up in the cards and in the description. In Kiev, before dawn on Thursday, Financial Times reporters heard explosions. We don't have the reporter's name. In the city's downtown area, an air raid siren sounded at about 7 a.m., sending people into shelters. Social media users in Ukraine reported hearing blasts in other cities, including Kharkiv and the Ukrainian-controlled city of Kramatorsk in the disputed eastern Donbass region. I'm going to stop right here. So this is what's going on. It looks like it is escalating. Putin has had enough. And what do I mean by had enough? Well, we need to go back into history here. After World War II, the Allies, which were made up of basically US, UK, and actually the Soviet Union, defeated Germany. The Russians or the Soviets, they came from the Eastern Front. They conquered Berlin. The Americans came from the West. And they decided to split Europe into two and Germany into two. So the western part of Europe came under NATO protection eventually in the early 50s when NATO was created, and the eastern part of Europe was under Soviet or Warsaw Pact. That was the opposite of NATO, the Warsaw Pact countries. And that was the Cold War, right? And you had Soviet troops in Eastern Europe, and you had NATO troops, American, British, French troops in Western Europe. And by the way, NATO troops or US and UK troops are still occupying Western Europe, by the way. They're still in Germany and other countries. So what happened in around 1991, after the Soviet Union had collapsed from within, Russia decided to withdraw all its troops from the Warsaw Pact countries. And with the Americans, they decided to do that. And the Americans promised that they would not expand NATO into the eastern part of Germany. And the Russians took that as meaning that NATO wouldn't expand. And why would you need NATO now if the Soviet Union collapsed? Well, there's NATO in 1998, and the Warsaw Pact countries, didn't exist anymore. But look at NATO now in 2022. So Russia now is surrounded by NATO forces, and by NATO forces, basically US forces. NATO, of course, now is all the red countries. And the last two countries really that are stopping NATO from encircling the western border of Russia, which is very much near Moscow, are Ukraine and Belarus. So that's what's going on there. I think the West, since 2014, has been pushing the Ukraine through subversion, I would say, to join NATO, and Russia won't have it. And is it any wonder that Russia and Belarus are quite closely allied? Because if Ukraine and Belarus join NATO, they'd have a gun to Russia's head, whoever may be in power, not just Putin. And I think that's what it's all about. So this is just a simple, a very brief explanation of what I think is going on. So with that, let's go and look at the markets, especially gold and silver, how they're breaking out today. Yes, I think there's going to be a lot of talk of how they're going up because of the conflict in Ukraine. But I think it's more than that. The other thing that will happen now with this conflict, and we're going to have to see where the dust settles. It's going to take a while for that to happen. We're going to see sanctions. We're going to see Western leaders react to this. Of course, they're going to be very scathing of Russia, of Putin. You're not going to hear too much of the background of NATO and the Warsaw Pact countries. I mean, a lot of people, I would say, the general public, don't even know where Ukraine is. And Ukraine, to give you an example, is bigger than France without its outre-mer or overseas territories. So it's a very big country, Ukraine. Very important agriculturally for the world and strategically for Russia and that part of the world as well. It's kind of in the path of the new One Belt, One Road, or the new Silk Road. So I would say that the other reason why gold and silver are going up is because this is going to give an excuse to the central banks, the Fed, the Bank of England, and the ECB, not to have to raise rates anymore. And I saw that, I think it was CBS already yesterday, was blaming the Ukrainian conflict for supply chain problems, for higher prices, for inflation. So yes, I think that's one of the biggest reasons why gold and silver are going up, because it's going to give a huge cover and excuse for the central bankers not to act. I know the Bank of England has acted already, but they didn't have the luxury of sweet talking or moping management of perception economics that the Fed does. And it makes you wonder if the people at the Fed knew this was going to happen, so they delayed it as much as possible, because we've had CPI rising over 5% for 6 months. And here we are, rates still at zero, and they're not really tapering. So I think it's a combination of many things. Yes, the geopolitical tensions help gold and silver. They're acting actually like they should, like safe haven assets that they are, like real money. So, oh, and just wanted to note that what's happening to gold and silver as well is part of a big shift that I spoke about last Sunday in a video called, entitled, Major Shift from Paper Assets to Hard Assets So Far in 22. And I was noting in that video how the stock market, the bond market, they're all like down year to date, while things like gold, silver, the miners, commodities are up year to date. So yeah, it's more than just Ukraine. And why am I focusing on that? Well, because I think people should, if they're thinking about acquiring gold and silver, should do it for the right reason, not for a quick buck because they think there's going to be a major war and they're going to make a profit. I think it's more of a long-term thing. It's going to keep shifting towards hard assets, a lot of money in the world, all the funny money that they've created over the last 15, 14 years. So let's quickly look at the chart of gold. I've shown you this many times before, of course. So the triangle we've had in the weekly chart here. And there were a couple levels that were really important for gold in the last month or so that it needed to break through. The first one was 1875, and we did that. And then the second one was going to be the high from May last year at just below 1920. And up until yesterday, we hadn't broken that May high from last year around 1915 or thereabouts. But this morning, we've gotten up to 1949. And right now we're around 1941. So it looks like it's finally broken out. What happens from here on? Well, as I've said a lot of times, you need to hold on to your gold and silver because it's going to get very volatile. We've had like a year and a half in consolidation. It's been frustrating, but at least it's given us time to stack. And I think we're finally seeing the breakout here. Short term, it can do a lot, gold and silver, but it looks like we've definitely got, a move here, even though nothing's guaranteed in life. So what are the next levels here? Well, I guess now we have to look at around 1970, which was the high from November 2020. And after that, 2000, because it's a round number. And then the all-time high around 2075 or thereabouts. So what about silver? Silver is also doing very well this morning. I spoke about how the breakout in silver, I felt that it was imminent. And yes, we've broken through 25 this morning. And some of you might have listened to Michael Oliver. I've had him on the channel a while ago, and he looks at momentum more than anything. Doesn't look at the charts like I do. But according to him, we need to close above 24.44 or 45 this week, and then we could be off to the races. Yes, we are at 25.09 right now, so it looks good, but there's still a lot of water to go under the bridge until tomorrow. A lot can happen. But aside from that, the level around 25.50, which was the high in November last year, we had a couple of weeks where we tried to break through that level. That's going to be the next resistance as well. So if we can break through there, it could be very bullish. And as I said, yes, you need to hold on to it. Hold on to your gold and silver. And I bet the premiums as well for gold coins, silver coins, and bars are probably pretty high. It's going to be tough to get now with the situation that's going on geopolitically. And to finish off, I think it was Alan Greenspan, and I'm paraphrasing him. He said this in a testimony to Congress when he was chairman of the Federal Reserve, that when everything fails geopolitically, the world order, when there's like war and misunderstanding between nations like we have now, he said that gold is the only thing that's accepted really as payments. Paper becomes fragile. And why is that? Well, because this is the stuff, this kind of conflict could be the trigger or the stuff of fall of empires. And when empires fall, their currencies fall as well. So I think there's a little bit of that there as well. And I would say that with what's going on in the Ukraine and all the saber rattling we've seen from the West, especially the US and the UK, you would expect them to do something for real, physically, kinetically. But right now it looks like they're just talking about sanctions. So they could lose a lot of face if they don't act and help Ukraine militarily. That's what I'm trying to say here. So with that, let's quickly look at where the rest of the markets are. We will go through gold and silver here quickly through the prices. It's 10 to 9 a.m. London time. So here we go. Spot gold is up $35, 1.85%, 1944. It's like World War II, 1944, the year before the end of the war. Some people like the numerology. The low's been 1906 and the high 1949. Silver up 56 cents or 2.3%, 25.10. High's been 25.17, low 24.40. So right near that Michael Oliver level of 44. The Dow future is down 665 points or 2% at 32,480. The NASDAQ 100 future is down 325 or 2.4%. S&P 500 is down 82, just under 2%. The Financial Times 100 index or FTSE is down 190 points, 2.5%, 7290. Just look at the German DAX index. Well, that's down 500 points or 3.5%. I would say Germany, probably of all the countries in Europe, has the most to lose because of this conflict. To the currencies, we're seeing the dollar rise quite strongly here, despite the fact that gold's going up as well. Dollar's up, well, the pound is down almost 2/3% at 134.67. The euro is down 0.5%, 112.40. And the dollar's down a third, though, versus the yen at 114.60. And the dollar's up slightly, 0.2% versus the yuan at 632.25. Aussie dollar is down 0.2%, 71.84. And the dollar is up 0.5% versus the Canadian dollar, 128.03. And the Kiwi dollar is down 0.75% at 67.21. Quickly go through the general commodities. Not surprisingly, crude oil is up over 5%. Actually, sorry, crude oil is up 6% at 97.40. That's WTI crude. Brent crude has traded above 100 overnight. Right now it's trading right at 100, and that's up 6% as well. High-grade copper is up 0.5%, 451. U.S. nat gas is up 6.5% at, let's see, 489. So to finish off, let's look at the bond market. The 10-year yield is down 7 basis points, so it means people are buying treasuries. The yield is at 1.9%, and even the 2-year yield has dropped 7 basis points as well to 1.53%. So yes, treasuries and the dollar are acting as safe havens, but I would say the best performing safe havens are gold and silver. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, and all these other platforms below here. I wish you all a great day. Take care. Bye.